So I wanted to give a little introduction to this conversation. So here I'm joined again by my buddy Nate. And if you haven't seen our other two talks, I'd recommend watching those first. They'll be linked in the video description. So I'd start with those. The first one was a bit of a history of Nate starting his career and the interesting story of how he put his first endeavors together, which eventually led to him starting his own company. The second talk is about Nate moving to Mexico and working remotely and kind of living the life a bit of a digital nomad. And in this third talk, we really got on a call just to catch up, and we decided to record it. So I'm putting it out, but I will say it wanders a bit, and there are a few topics that we touch on. We sort of catch up with where Nate is right now in his life and his career. And we spend a bit of time talking about the life of a digital nomad. And, both of us work remotely in different respects. I do it periodically throughout the year, and then he's actually gone up for longer periods of time and set up camp. So we talk about that and some of the strengths of that lifestyle, and also some of the myths about it. And then the other main focus of the talk is Nate's been going through a transition where he's moved from being sort of a solo practitioner with maybe a few people helping him freelance to opening up an agency and what it's like to run a team versus to work for yourself. So those are the main topics. I think it's always a pleasure to catch up with him and hear about his journey as he continues to grow and expand. So I hope you enjoy it. So you are back in the States, is that right?
Stateside.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
yeah, so what's the latest? I think it's been about a year, I think,
been
since
about a
we caught
year.
up. Yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah, I left Mexico in June. I came back to the States to see my mom and dad and my family. And I was really only supposed to be for about like a couple weeks and ended up being all summer. So I'm still here.
wow. Do you
Yeah.
still have stuff in Mexico or?
Uh-uh. So
Okay,
I kept the apartment that I had down there and then terminated the lease while I was here.
okay,
Because when I got back here, I before I left, I was like, I'll keep the lease open. And then when I got back to the States, I was like, now that I'm here, I feel like I want to stick around for a while and
right,
probably not return to where I was. So I
okay,
decided to terminate the lease.
okay. And I think when we spoke about you spending time in Mexico City, I think you were here right in the midst of the rainy season, right? And I think
It
that's
was
what you shared with me. Yeah,
Yeah, it was September, October, and
yeah,
was not. I really liked it, and the more I look back on it, I think I liked it more in retrospect than I thought when I was there. I would absolutely try it again. In fact, I might go in October because I have a friend that's going to be there. Um, but no, I didn't have like the best time.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, I was here. I was here last September. I think you and I just missed each other. And
mhm,
um and when I was here, it was rainy. It was, every day you could count on it raining sometime between 4 and 6, and it would either go for an hour or it'd go for the whole night.
right.
Um, but I think after the end of September, it clears up a lot. And then I was here in February, and there was like no rain or virtually no rain. And
Yeah.
this time it's been a little bit mixed, definitely not as rainy as last year. So,
I
but
think we when I was there, there was some rain, but I think what was more annoying, or not annoying, but like frustrating, especially coming from like the beach life, was that in the day it would be really warm, and then at night it would drop like significantly.
yeah, it's
Uh,
cooler at night. Yeah,
yeah, and so it was like you never knew when to wear a jacket. Like it was at night you needed a jacket, and then in the day, like sweating if you wear one.
Right. Yes.
And I was all out of sorts. I think the change in climate and then the elevation and stuff, and yeah, we did it for a month, and we're like, all right, we've had enough.
It's not okay.
But I
Okay.
would go back and try to give it the college try,
Yeah.
because I did think
Yeah.
it was a really good city.
Yeah. Were you in Condessa at all, or where were you staying?
We were in Roma Norte
Okay.
on I forget the street.
Pretty
Maybe
close.
like, yeah, maybe 4 or 5 blocks south of like where it starts to get like Juarez area, like
Yeah.
above Roma Norte. We were in a
Yeah.
really great area. It was a fine place and stuff. You're
Nice.
where there now?
So I'm in Condessa, and there's Park Mexico, and then there are these two parks right next to each other. I'm on the south side of those parks, and so
Okay,
it's
are
a
those the
really
two
nice
parts?
area.
One of those is the Hippodromo, right?
Yes.
Okay,
So
all
I'm
right.
I'm right at the south side of that.
Oh, that's a great spot.
Yeah, it's a nice area. I mean, I really like the hotel that I'm in. Um, the only thing is, it's a little noisy at times. It's funny because one of the reasons I wanted to spend time this time around was uh, in New York. It was so noisy, and they were doing construction in front of my building. So it was getting to be like a psychological experiment. So I was like, I got
Right.
to get out of here. But fortunately, this time here, it hasn't been quite as noisy. I don't know. Maybe it's just comparatively to New York, but there is a lot of street noise typically. And but
Like normal city noise, or like, are you right
well,
next to
I
like
think
some club or
I think
something?
I think I'm close to a thoroughfare, so like I'll hear trucks going by. And like today's Friday. There's a great market right downstairs from my hotel, which is amazing, like amazing food and stuff. But that's like they're people all day, and yeah, just city sounds.
Yeah.
So how's work, and how's that going, and being back in the States?
Work is going well. Being back in the States, I think I needed like the States. I think so the in January I was in Chiapas. I went to San Cristobal. Um,
Okay.
and I ended up getting really sick, which is like a common thing there in San Cristobal. It's like
Huh.
yeah, it's like first time visitors. If it's your first time, you are like almost with 100% certainty going to get sick. Um, Even if you don't drink the tap water and stuff, there's some sort of microbial thing there, that pretty much gets anybody on their first time. And I was there for a week and was sick as a dog the entire time.
Yeah.
Awful. It was terrible. And I had also just broken up with my girlfriend who I had been with
Oh man.
up to that point for like 6 or 7 months. So I was in San Cristobal like alone, sick as a dog, going through a
Oh.
breakup. Terrible. It was awful.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah, it was the worst experience. And work was like fine, but I couldn't concentrate on anything. So I ended up canceling like my the rest of my itinerary there and going head straight back to Playa. Um, After getting back to Playa within like 48 hours, I felt like 110%. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I was speaking to a doctor and they were like, sometimes when your body gets really sick with some like sort of microbial like stomach bug or something like that, change in climate can actually be really beneficial. So you went from
Oh.
like being up in the mountains and cold and sick, and now you're at the beach and a lot of sun, ton of vitamin C. It feels like home again because that's where you spent most of your time.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was great. But I think shortly after, I was kind of just over Playa del Carmen.
Okay.
Um,
And
and I think,
ironically, not to divulge too much, but ironically, I'm flying there tonight. So
I
so
mean, look, I th
when we're done talking, I want to get some details from you. But so Yeah, and that makes sense. Totally hot, sunny, really nice. Um,
Yeah.
and it must be nice getting back to the States and like home, you know.
Yeah, I think I needed it. When I got back to Playa, like I hit work again really hard. I started going to the gym and got a trainer, a personal trainer. Was working out like 4 or 5 times a week.
Nice.
Um, but like all my time was spent in the condo and with work or in the gym. Like I wasn't going out, wasn't like eating at restaurants, wasn't drinking, like nothing. It just became work in the gym. Um, and it got kind of boring because Playa is very much uh like party central, sort of. It's kind of like a mini Las Vegas. Um,
Okay.
and I think it started to get at me like mentally because I was just like cooped up all the time.
Mm,
Uh, so I was like, okay, I don't think I want to stay here any longer. Let me go home, recharge, and then maybe come back. But once I got home, um, I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna go back.
mm,
Maybe
nice.
to visit, but probably not for long term. I mean, I was there
Okay.
for 2 years. I think 2 years there is probably too much.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, being back home was a nice change.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had conversations with different people who kind of do the nomad working lifestyle. And there's this thing about going into a different culture, right? Um, and I was chatting with one person who I think had a big appetite for variety, right? So I don't think like they wouldn't stay here for 2 years. That would be too long. But I think what they ended up enjoying is sort of what I would call a hub and spoke existence, which is I pretty much how I live. You know, it's like New York's my home base. I'm there the majority of the year, I would say, you know, where I'm there most of my time. But I usually work out of the States. I mean, I target 2 months. I think this year it's going to be a little bit less than that. Last year was right around 2 months in different locations, and it's nice. So I get enough variety, enough time away, but I also have a sense of a home base that I like. So
Right. This is something that earlier in the year I was really struggling with in terms of like I'm getting to that age now. I think work is becoming progressively more important that I need a base, and I'm not so sure it should be Playa del Carmen.
mhm.
I'm still debating, like, because I was reading a lot about how entrepreneurs and people with their own businesses or people who are very career oriented do the traveling thing. Because I do think there's a difference between someone who is just like traveling to travel and someone who has a demanding job and still wants to travel. Like I don't think someone like myself can just pack up and go every other week. Um, it's not conducive to productivity. It's not conducive to stability and clarity. It's not conducive to responsibilities. Um, so I think doing more of that like hub and spoke model, like you mentioned, where it's like having a base, but spending X amount of time out of the year elsewhere is probably that sweet spot. It's just okay. Well, do I get a base in the States or do I get a base abroad? Um, and the more I thought about it, the more it's like, where does this urge or where does this idea come from that your base has to be abroad? Like why do you feel like you have to commit 100% to being abroad? Like, where did you get that idea? And it's like,
Yeah,
well, I don't know.
I think it's totally erroneous, and
Exactly.
and and the base could move, right?
And the base can move.
I like the familiarity of New York. I don't think New York is the ideal place for me. I think it's just what I've become accustomed to as my base, right? So I'm sort of not addressing the bigger question of like, okay, what would be like the ultimate base for me?
Right.
Um, but you know, I have one buddy who's here for about a year, so this is his base for the year, right? Kind of like you did. Um, and he's traveling out a lot, but he's based in Mexico City right now.
Right.
I think the I think some of the nomad work thing is a bit of I think there's a mythology about it. I think people think you you're traveling and just traveling. But if you're somebody like yourself, and I think myself that's very focused on our career, um, I mean, when I was here last February, I was working. Like I was so engaged in work, it was hard for me to really take advantage of the scenery here at all. You know, I mean, it was nice to get out at night, go for a nice
Right.
dinner, but during the day, I was like all in. So, um, all right, it's
I think I'm still learning what actually most beneficial for myself, especially as I'm getting older. And like I think the 30-year-old that first got to playa is very different from the 32-year-old I am now,
mm,
where I don't really want to party anymore.
mm,
And you know, even going out drinking is like the hangovers are brutal, and it's like that kills 48 hours. If I go out and have a good time, I'm pretty much out of commission for the next 48 hours. And it's like
yeah,
I can't what's the cost of that? And
yeah,
it becomes like this diminishing returns thing where it's like if I make more of an effort to go out and do stuff, it's like I don't know. So I think I don't know where I would want my ideal base to be. Maybe the States, maybe Europe, maybe somewhere else. I really don't know. Um, I'm grateful that my parents have been like, you can stay here as long as you want. We love having you. We haven't
right,
had you live with us in like 10 years. This is great.
yeah,
They're loving. Um, and of course, they've taken good care of me. So most of the
that's
time when
awesome.
I visited home, after a week, I'm like, okay, I gotta get out of here. Like you
Mm,
guys are bugging me. There's nothing to do here. But this time was completely different, where it's like I'm actually super comfy. My parents like they don't bother me. We hang out when we want to hang out, and we don't when we don't want to.
mm,
Um, it's just really comfortable.
mm,
I'm starting to get that itch where it's like, okay, I miss going out. There's nothing really to do around here. I
mm-hmm,
want to start traveling again, but I do think I needed like 3 months of a come down of
mm.
like some sense of like stability and security. The other kicker to all this was that in May is June, we pivoted into an agency. So it's
Oh
no
wow.
longer just myself.
Okay.
We're now officially an agency. Um, and it happened very quickly. We didn't really have the infrastructure or processes set up to cope with that transition.
Mm,
Um, so my dad was like, come home, come home. You have to square away the business, like focus on that because if you're doing this transition in an agency model and you don't even have a foundation in place to handle that, you're going to get killed.
mm,
Um, so coming home has let me just sit tight and focus on handling that transition from just myself to a small team, um, and get those foundations in place to be able to be successful with this, and not do it like by the seat of my pants.
got it. Yeah, I mean, anyone I know that's really focused on their work, they're pretty much all in. That's, you know, especially if you have your own business. Like you're working a lot. You know, I think if you talk about work-life balance, which is another sort of mythical thing, I think what the people that I see who do it well, they're completely focused on their business and their health, right? So most people, like you're not the only person I've heard saying that they don't drink a lot or don't drink at all. Almost everyone that I know that's all in on their business drinks a minimum, I would say, and goes out a minimum. Like maybe it's 10% of the time at the most.
Yeah.
Um, I would say if I'm self-reflective, one thing that I'm not great at is taking vacations. And I think the reason for that is I'm so used to blending travel and work in a way that I lost sight of the idea of just having a vacation. Like I don't know, I haven't had one of those in ages, um, and I think also it's not something that I'm accustomed to or something. Like I kind of enjoy the balance of like I'm here. This last week was incredibly busy work wise, so I was just like done every day. Next week I'm going to be here and I'm going to have a lot more freedom and I'll be out walking
Right.
more and seeing things and hopefully see some museums. So
Yeah. I think
um,
that's like the rub with the whole vacation thing is that, I mean, for me, it already felt like I was on vacation,
mhm,
living in and being able to choose my own work schedule and stuff like that. And it's like, um, there was never like I think I took one vacation. It was a week. I went up to Holbox,
mm,
um, very top of the Yucatan. It's like on an island. It's amazing, Rob. If you can get there, get there.
mm.
It's the nicest beach I've ever seen in my life. It
Wow.
really is special. And I went there for a week, and was kind of like offline, and it felt good. And I had like prepared everything in advance to like do it, and it felt comfortable and stuff. But like, I don't feel the need to like. I don't know. That was the last vacation I took. Uh, and that was a year ago. Um, I think I think when you have like flexibility in your schedule, and like you said in your own case, where you kind of see when you're going to be busy and when you're not going to be busy and kind of just work around that, then it's kind of always like on vacation, or not like always on vacation, but you just have a certain level of flexibility that so many other people do not have.
Mm,
Like I watch a lot of soccer, and on any given day, if there's a soccer game that I want to watch, I'll just watch it. If whether it's 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., and I know that there's a lot of other people out there who can't do that. They can't just stop whatever they're doing in their day,
yeah.
to go do what they want. And I'll push all my meetings to the evening if I want to go do something in the day, or vice versa. Um, so it never really feels like, I don't know. Does that make sense? Like it never feels like
I mean,
there's
what what I enjoyed this last week. So I had 3 days that were just completely packed, facilitating all day. At the end of the day, you're dead, right? Um, but what I liked is at the end of the day, I could go out for a walk, and I was in Mexico City,
right.
and then go to a new restaurant. I had been in New York for too long a stretch the last time, and then throw in construction in front of my building and everything. So I needed new impressions. I needed some freshness to loosen me up. And so it's great having that here, that when my day's done, I can go out there. But I would say usually I have the flexibility you're talking about too. Like if there's something I want to do in the middle of the day, I'll have meetings around that thing, right? Which is really nice.
Yeah.
I'm curious how does agency life how is that different from what you had before? Do you like it? Are you still getting used to it?
Yeah.
Off the record, nobody's listening.
Um. Oh boy. It's definitely not easy. It's tough. I When it was just myself and I was just freelancing, it was a hell of a lot easier. It's just myself. It's not really a business. It's it's really easy to kind of just wake up at X time and shut off at Y time. Now that it's an agency, it's myself. We have an operations manager, a finance manager, and then a team of, uh, I think, 9 service workers. So a combination of
Wow.
SEOs, design, copywriters, and writers, and then a couple developers, um, and a CRO specialist. And it never stops. Um, I'm on 24 hours really. If I'm not sleeping, if I'm awake, all I'm thinking about is the agency. Um, and you're also tasked with not just providing the same services that I was providing when I was a freelancer, but also you have a whole host of other issues related to the agency itself. Like, our profitability, revenue, are we doing the right model? Chasing invoices, who's not performing? Um, so and so on the team is about to take a vacation, like all sorts of stuff like that.
Mm, mm.
Um, so it's hard, and
It
sometimes,
it does sound hard. Um,
yeah, sometimes I'm like, God, like, is this worth it? Like, seriously, is all of this headache and stuff worth the money or worth the opportunities? And I ask myself that all the time. Um, but I don't think I'd stop. I don't think I'll ever stop.
it it brings up a really interesting question for me, which is when you're in a role like that, how can you set it up so that you can turn it off at certain hours? Like I work with a lot of folks like you that are business owners, and this is a big issue. It's like I used to do more work kind of in the IT realm, and there would be clients that would call me, and I'd be out to dinner. I'd get an emergency call, and it was this always on thing. And then finally, I it took a ton of work, but I set it up that okay, during these hours, I am not going to be available unless like literally something like there's a massive failure. Um, but it takes a lot of planning to get to the point where you can shut it down, both in terms of people reaching out to you, but also you shutting it down psychologically and saying like, okay, things are covered enough that I'm not going to worry from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. when I go to bed or whatever it is. Right.
That's where I would like to get to.
Yeah.
I just don't see it happening for quite some time. I think the worst thing is that from 9 to 5, it's nothing but meetings. Um, and it's like, when am I even supposed to actually do any work?
Hmm.
Like, I'm yeah. So from 9 to 5, it's a ton of meetings. And then after 5 p.m. is when, like, okay, I can actually start to focus and work on things. Um, but then even let's say 11 o'clock rolls around. At that point, I start thinking about, like, okay, other stuff that, like, are we doing all the right things? Like, is this working? Are we providing the highest value of service? Like, are clients happy? Are we getting results? Is this the right model? Should we change to some other sort of methodology? All sorts of stuff. You're just constantly in a state of questioning.
Hmm.
Um, so it never turns off. Um,
And
I
when
think
did you
one of the
transition?
May.
Okay.
Yeah. So May was when the transition happened. Basically, what had happened was that I had an SEO client, and they were like, "We're also interested in user experience and copywriting and stuff." And I said, "Okay," and they said, "We don't really want to manage it, do you have a team behind you who can also do this stuff? And I think I had said this on our calls before, like having an agency was always the thing I wanted to do. So when
Mm,
this client pretty much teed up the opportunity, like, hey, if you bring in all these other people and form a little team behind you and a little agency, we'll bankroll it and you can you know bring those people in for this for us, for our company. I said yes.
right.
So then put together a team, did that for a month, and then finally in June was like, okay, we're gonna have to get official with this. So formed the LLC and hired people and blah 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 blah. And now with client engagements, that's what it is. It's we're no longer me. It's an agency. Um, I think the biggest priority has been removing me from the service work so that I can focus on sales and the business itself,
Hmm.
which has been really difficult because when we moved into this agency model, I didn't have any like SOPs for myself. I didn't have any procedures or anything like that. There was no structure because it was just myself. Um, so in June, I hired an operations manager to come in and pretty much, hey, everything's a dumpster fire. We pivoted to an agency pretty much overnight, and we don't have the foundation in place for this. Can you help with this? So she came in, and now everything's been about procedures and SOPs and playbooks and guidelines
Hmm.
and onboarding processes, which to me is like homework. It's like for me, it's like nauseating. Uh, but we have to has to be done.
Yeah.
Uh, if I want to remove myself from like as much as I can so that I can have more control over my schedule. Um, and of course, scalability is the other thing. It's like if I'm still so ingrained in all these processes, then we'll never be able to scale.
Hmm.
The business has to be able to run without me.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm
So,
wondering, I imagine that a certain number of those questions will iron out over the next 6 months. Like you won't be asking, hopefully, you won't be asking the same questions, right? Um,
right.
and
I'm, yeah, go ahead.
and
Sorry.
well, and I think there's something I observe with people, which is like you're probably really good with clients now, right? Because you've done that. You did that on your own. You're good at going in, you're good at talking to them, understanding their needs, figuring out all the requirements and stuff. And then that's kind of your consulting offer. So I imagine that's why you're on so many calls. And hopefully at a certain point, one of your colleagues will be as good at that or good enough at that where you don't have to be on every client call, for example. Or maybe unless you set up your business that way. But when you talk about scaling, like there's got to be hopefully somebody that you can trust that's as good with that process as you are. Um, but that's a tough hire. Like
100%.
that's a
No,
bespoke hire, right?
clients love working with us or me or and a combination of us because of the value we provide beyond just deliverables. They know that they're getting a consultant when speaking with me where nothing's left on the table. I really dig into your business to understand your customers and your sales processes and your product, to understand how to best leverage SEO and these other things for it. So clients really like that because they see the value we provide beyond just the hard things we turn in, the tangible things we turn in at the end of the day. Um, but yeah, that requires me to be in all these meetings, and it's not sustainable. I have a guy, his name is Mike. He's based in the UK, who has started to be in client facing meetings with me and
Hmm.
also take some on his own, where I maybe like one or two I've said, can you handle this meeting on your own? I don't really want to be involved in it.
Mm,
And he has done it, and he's done a very good job.
great.
Um, it's a slow process. I'm definitely not ready to just
Yeah.
here's the shitty thing. It's like, is anybody I'm always gonna think that I am the best at what I do.
Hmm.
Letting go of that trust, letting go of that, like, even it's just been very difficult. Like, um finding another SEO who I can trust. And again, that's why we're putting together these standard operating procedures and these guidelines and stuff, so that someone can come in who doesn't have to be me,
Hmm.
read a 2-page document on how to do something and do it to my specs, and I can just kind of oversee it or do like a spot check from the strategy portion of it. And that's it, done.
Yeah, and I
Um,
I think what happens is, I mean, I think many of us have that experience of like, oh, I'm the person that should be in the meeting. Nobody's going to do a better job than me, right? So I totally get that, right? Um, so you have this model where you're inviting this person, you mentioned this guy Mike. You're in enough meetings that you have a confidence that he can do at least a good enough job, right? And and that doesn't mean that you may not ever see that client. It might mean that you're in 1 out of 5 meetings and you're getting a read, like, are they getting what they need, from Mike over time, or whoever the person is.
right.
But there are only certain areas that I feel that way. Like, organization is not my strong suit. So there's certain people I know they will crush that, and I would rather have them on those pieces. Just like you have a process design person now, or your COO, or it sounds like that, like you said, that isn't something you want to do. Maybe you want to check their work when it's done, but you don't want to be doing the heavy lift on that.
No, she honestly, I love her. She's great at what she does. She was an essential hire, and she's really transformed us and stuff. But when she puts these SOPs in front of me and to review and stuff, it's like, oh gosh, this is nauseating. It's like homework to me.
Mm,
I'm not organized by nature, not an organized person. Um, so all this organization has been like overwhelming. Um, you said something that's always bothered me and made me scared about this. You said, if you can get him on calls where he's, providing or doing a good enough job, that right there has always scared me. Good enough. And it's something that I have learned to let go. I'm going to have to be okay with never getting uh, something 100%. I think there's like 10 to 20% that you're going to have to just let go.
you were you
Yeah.
were you were talking about the challenge of kind of accepting that good enough standard, or accepting 80%. Um, and I think I think it's a tough stage. Um, it's helpful for me to hear you talk about that. I mean, I'm pretty much my own show, but when it comes to delegating, I think that's the challenge in and switching to a model of, okay, everything's going to be 80%, but part of my new role is to come in and check somebody's work and hopefully polish it off and get it that extra 20% that you're shooting for. Um,
Yeah. In theory, yeah. I mean, I think in practice it's harder. It's like,
yeah.
okay, how, gosh, yeah. I mean, these are like the questions that keep me up at night. It's like these sort of intangible questions about, because it's everything is up to you. I mean, everything is on you at the end of the day. Like, how you want to do this, how you want to deliver this service, how you want to structure this service, how you want to manage this team, all that stuff. And if you don't have management experience or experience in this, I think you're just constantly wondering, are we doing this right? And while the numbers at the end of each month can tell you, hey, something's working,
Mm-hmm.
we're doing well.
Mm.
We have really good margins. We pay very fairly. The business is objectively, by all financial accounts and metrics, is doing well. But it's like, okay, what's that mean? Because it's like, well, is that making me happy? It's like
That's a whole other question.
the increase in revenue and profit and more money making. It's not, and that's why sometimes I wonder. It's like, hey, God, is this worth it? Like,
Mm.
this is the crappiest thing. I even hate to admit this. I was arguably happier when it was just myself
Mm.
than I am now. I don't know what that means. I just know that the guy that I was then, life was easier, had less responsibilities, was just happier, more adventurous. Now, I'm not that person anymore.
You know, I I can think of two people right off the top of my head that started their business, started out on their own, hired a few people, and then like this guy Sam Ovens that I follow. I've mentioned him to you before.
Yeah.
At one point, he grew to, I think he had 60 people, office in the States, office in Ireland, and this year he shut it all down to like I think 7 people, and completely changed their revenue model. Actually got rid of their base product that was, it was huge, but it was generating all this work. Besides generating a lot of revenue, it was generating a ton of work for them. So he just cut it off. And
Right.
and so it's really interesting. And then the other story I'm not as familiar with, but it was basically the same story about 20 years ago. This guy had a staff of 50 people, and he shut it down to working with just him and one other person. So it's interesting. But I will say, just my sense is you're also very new in this new world. So I imagine it's a little bit early to make that judgment call. And as you were talking about, as we're talking about this level of standard of good enough, one thing that occurs to me is, not all decisions are created equally, right? And I think we can get lost thinking that every decision is at this level of importance, and figuring out some scorecard for decision making is really, really important, so you can kind of offload the stuff that isn't that important, that's kind of chewing up your mental RAM.
That's actually a really good point, because there's days where I will find myself poring over something for hours, and I'm like, this isn't going to change anything today, tomorrow, in a week, or in a month. Like, what? You just wasted 3 hours worrying about something or questioning something that is of low importance. You have X, Y, and Z client that needs X, Y, and Z tomorrow. Like, focus on that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like an exercise. It's a 24-hour exercise in, like you said, where to concentrate, like that brain power and RAM.
Mm.
Um, and I think been been tough. There's also, the whole thing about imposter syndrome
Mm.
is another. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. I mean, we could talk. I mean, we could talk about this for hours, because there's just, welcome to this world. Like, it's But
Yeah.
um, I think what you also said is really important. I just got here. I cannot start thinking of all this stuff as like permanent.
Hmm.
Maybe once we finally get all these SOPs in place and start, you know, getting right team members in and stuff like that, things get easier and things get more manageable. Still the same sort of like hecticness of running a business and stuff, but at least it's, maybe I start to feel more positive each day. And I also want to make this clear. If it sounds like, I'm complaining or that this is really tough, or yeah, I'm not gonna lie, yeah, it's not easy and stuff. But I would be lying. I would be completely lying if I didn't say, man, it is a hell of a lot of fun.
Mm,
The sheer the craziness of it all, and it's fun and it's
I
fulfilling.
bet. Yeah.
So I may not be as like day to day positive or in high spirits as I used to be when it was just me. And I
Mm,
may not have as much free time in my day as I used to, but this is engaging stuff. And I think for anybody that wants to be challenged and wants to be engaged and yeah, it's pretty fulfilling in that regard. And I think it makes those those small wins that you kind of like wait for that much greater,
mm.
because I think there's so much ebb and flow in terms of like up and downs in business. Sometimes you're just waiting for like a small win, and I think it makes like those small wins like that much greater. And
Mm.
you're like on 100 for 10 minutes, and it feels amazing. Um, of course, like I don't know, something happens, and then you're back down to zero.
Then that reality hits again. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so in that regard, it's been an adventure, and yeah, I'm gonna stick with it. Like,
I mean, it sounds like a really cool challenge. It sounds like you're stepping up to a new realm, which is great. So, whether you stay with it long term or not, totally irrelevant. At least this is something now you've had an experience of. You've had an experience
yeah,
of working with a team of, 10 people. That's amazing.
yeah,
Um,
uh,
so you're gonna stick it out there for a bit, as home base, as far as you know, and then
I'm on Airbnb like every single day, looking at places in Mexico, Europe. Like Rob, the itch is there, and I'm sure you've been here as well before. Where
yeah,
you're constantly looking and
yeah,
seeing what's out there.
yeah. I'm
Um,
I'm thinking, I don't know where, but I'm thinking something in Europe for a while, maybe in the fall. I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet.
that's Yeah, I haven't figured it out yet either. I'm looking all over Europe and like, starting to think logistics, like time zone differences and how I'd have to set up my days and blah blah blah. And while it like looks and seems like scary, like holy shit, like going all over Europe and blah blah blah, it's really just getting on the plane and figuring it out. Like
Yeah.
I, it so I don't know, but I'm actively looking, and the itch is starting to come back. And
Mm,
so yeah, I think maybe end of this month, or like October 1, I'll probably be back out there again.
okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I think seeing your example definitely helped me. Like I learned that from you. Like just go there and you'll figure some shit out. Um, I'm amazed how my system is reluctant to go try a new place. So like absolute terror about going somewhere new. Totally unconscious, not doesn't make any sense. But since I know that about myself, I also know little hacks that help me take a step. Like, oh, okay, you did it. So totally possible. Or when I first came here, I had a couple clients who had moved over here for a while. And I think knowing that they were here and all the infrastructure all worked, somehow it let my brain know, okay, I can go do that. Even though I've traveled a ton and it doesn't make sense rationally, when I think like if you said go to Belgium, I'd be like, really? Is that okay? So,
I find it fascinating, like what our brains do to us sometimes, and how we
right?
have to fight back on that. Honestly, I'm more like you now than I was 2 years ago. If you told me to go somewhere new, I'd freak out about it.
Hmm.
I don't know where this has come from. My dad makes fun of me all the time for it because he's like, "You've done so much wild stuff on a whim in your life. What has happened to you?" And it's like I think it's a having like a weird concept of time where I feel like because I know I got stuck in playa for like 2 years. I'm afraid that now I treat any future place as potentially being the same thing, where it's
Mm.
like final and permanent. Where it's like, well, if I go to Europe, am I missing out on something in South America? Or if I go to South America, am I missing out on something in South Africa?
Well,
Or
there
am I
you
gonna
are.
miss out on going to Japan? But that's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous way of thinking. Like you can why do I have to think in these binary sort of terms of like
Right.
if I go to Europe, it means I'm never ever going to be able to go to South America ever in my life. Why? That's silly.
You
I
know,
don't
it's
understand.
interesting when I first came here and the degree to which I liked it, one of the concerns that immediately came into my head was, oh my God, I'm not going to go back to Japan. Like I was worried that because it's so easy to come here, that I wouldn't go there. But thankfully, I still really want to go back to Japan. It's just they haven't opened the borders, um, except for
How hard do
business.
you have to fight yourself on that?
I mean, that's what's funny. I thought the ease of this would kind of make Japan just not an option, but I really like going to Japan, and I have a lot of friends there, and a lot of places I like to hang out. So I think pretty much the minute it opens, if my schedule can be clear, I will. I'll fly there.
Right.
Um, so, but it is an interesting thing. When you go to one place, you're not going to another. But that's part of life.
Yeah, but
Who
that
cares?
we've been doing that all of our
Yeah,
lives.
yeah,
Doing this instead of this and
yeah,
having to make that choice, and you always end up, if you can, once you're done with this, go back and do that. I
yeah.
don't know why I've developed this sort of weird it totally goes against everything I believe in. Where it's like go do whatever you want whenever you want, and like you can do everything if you want to do it.
Well,
And
and
now it's like
when you went to Mexico the first time, that was your focus. It wasn't about a choice or this or that. It was just I want to go there, right?
yeah, yeah. And then I think getting stuck there kind of was like scary to me, where it's like,
Mm,
why am I getting stuck here? Like I can't get myself out. Like why does this look scary to me? And blah blah blah. So yeah, yeah. I don't know. I'm gonna have to fight this. Also, I think Europe might be a smart move because of the way the visa requirements are set up in Europe, with like the Schengen agreement of like most of the European countries, you can only stay in them for 90 days out of 180 days. So you really
okay.
only have about 3 months in a lot of those countries, which would force me to like get off my ass and like
Right.
not be so scared to
That's
go somewhere
hilarious.
else.
What?
Uh, so
Yeah.
so I think if I really want to like fight this thing I've developed, just go to Europe and, and if you don't get out and move around, they're going to throw you in like immigration jail. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I think that's a solution.
I think that's your answer. Um, all right. I
I
got to
have
jump.
Yeah, no,
So
I have a